So let's keep going. So now, save the game controller script if you haven't already. And we're going to return to Unity. And in Unity, we're going to set up our variables in our game controller. So we need a reference to the question text, right? We need a reference to the answer button object pool and a reference to the answer button parent, which is the answer panel. So now if we go to our persistent, let's save this scene. If we go to our persistent scene, hopefully we start the game. Yes. So we can see this is displaying our first question correctly. It's pulled in the answers, which are yes and no. It's pulled in the question, and the time and score aren't doing anything, and we still can't click on anything, but we can at least pull our first question from our data controller here into our UI in the game view here. So that is a good start. So now let's add to our game controller the ability to click on buttons. So we're going to need a new function here, which is going to be a public function that returns void, and that's going to be called answer button clicked. It is going to take a Boolean called is correct. So when we call this function, so this function is going to get called by the answer buttons themselves, and we're going to add a little bit of code to the answer button script as well to call this function. And when the answer button calls this function, it's going to pass in whether or not the answer clicked is correct so that the game controller can either add points or not add points. So first of all, we're going to check if is correct is true, right? Did we get a correct answer? If we did, it's time to add some points, right? So we are going to add to our player score. We're going to say player score plus equals current round data dot points added for correct answer, right? So however many points you're supposed to get in this round, those are going to be added for you. And then we're going to set score display. Oh, did I not add a text for the score? Nope. Okay, so we need a public text variable called score display text. Let's just refactor this to be question display text so that they're the same. Okay, we're going to take score display text and we are going to update it. So we're going to say score display text dot text equals score colon space quotation mark plus player score dot toString. So we're going to convert the player's score from an integer to a string and append it to score. You could also break this out and just have a static UI element that just displays this and then just break this into two pieces. So there's one UI element that never changes and another one that just takes the score, but it just seemed like it would be a little faster to do it this way for me on the stream. But you could split that up and you could avoid the string operation there if you wanted to. I'll leave that to you guys for extra credit. So we're going to display the updated score. Then we're going to check to see if we've used up all our questions. So we're going to see if question pool dot length is greater than question index plus 1. So do we still have questions left to ask? If so, we're going to add 1 to our question index and show another question. If not, else, then we're going to end the round. And we haven't declared end round yet, so let's do that now. So we're going to add a new public function that returns void called end round. And in it, we are going to set is round active to equal false. And I'm just going to call it here so I don't forget to put that in, because I always forget when I'm moving on. And we're going to need a couple of additional variables here so that we can activate and deactivate our two panels. So we're going to add a public game object called question panel and a public game object called round over panel, or round end panel. What did I call them in my notes? Let's use the same names. This is going to be round end display and question display. Let me not just freestyle my variable names here. Okay, so we're going to have question display dot set active false, right? We're no longer showing questions. And then we're going to have round end display dot set active true. Okay, so basically we're going to turn off the question display panel and turn on the round end display panel to say that the round has ended. And now, so we've got answer button clicked. Do we have what we need? We should have what we need to be able to click through the questions and get a score. We don't have the timer working yet or the way to get back to the menu, but we'll come back and do that. Let's test that first. Let's save. Let me take some questions and then we will, or actually let's test first and then I'll take some questions just to make sure it's actually a good stopping point. Let's go back to our persistent scene. Wait, actually in the game, I need to set up my variables. We need the question display text. Not this. No, was that right? Whoops, I'm confusing myself. Question display. Oh, because I changed the names. That's why it's score display text. The question panel, round over panel. There we go. All right. And of course, I forgot to add the code that I need to my answer button class. Let's put these in the scripts folder. I knew I was forgetting something. Let's add that in real quick. We are going to add in, let's just try to get to a decent stopping point here. So in the answer button class, we're going to add a private game controller now that we've written the game controller called game controller. And we're going to add, we don't need update, we're going to add a public function that returns void called handle click. And in handle click, we're going to call game controller dot answer button clicked and pass in answer data dot is correct, right? So when we call the answer button clicked function in game controller, we're going to tell the game controller, yes, the answer that was clicked on this button is actually a correct answer or it's not. And before we can do that, we just need to add to start, we need to find a reference to game controller. So we're going to say game controller equals find object of type game controller. And again, right, if we're at the point where we have buttons being displayed, we know that we're in the screen with the game controller, so we can safely find it. Okay, there we go. Okay, let's save that. And then we just need to add in the prefab for the answer button, we just need to add an on-click event to call from the answer button script to call the handle click function when it's clicked. And now that should work. Yes. But as we can see, our buttons are not getting removed. So let's take care of that. In game control, I think I declared the remove answer buttons, but I never called it. No, I did. In show question, we need to add the button to the list so that we can keep track of it. So we're going to set answer button. We're going to call answer button game object dot add and add answer button game object singular. Okay, let's test that real quick. There we go. Okay, good. And then we have to set up the menu to go back. Okay, so just to recap what went wrong there. I left out a line where I'm adding the answer button game objects to the list of active answer buttons. And so when we call remove answer buttons, they're not actually in the list to be removed. So they weren't getting removed. So we were just getting more and more buttons in the hierarchy. So I just failed to write that line. So this is the line that you need to make sure that you have in your script if you're following along, which is to add the game object to the list of game objects so that it can be removed when the time comes. All right, let me look at the chat.